Man, I feel like you guys are starting to have fun without me. I saw in the Cedric and Zach are already having some fun. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. Right? Or good morning, good morning, good morning. Hope everyone is doing awesome. Woo, woo, woo. Yeah, I'm coming to you. I guess we could play the game, but it's not really fun when it's just a hotel room. Right? I should go outside and show you the mountains and the warm weather. And I am in Scottsdale, Arizona for the week. Woo! So you're traveling around the West Coast. So 6:30 my time, but I love getting up early and I love having some fun and knocking some things out. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Always appreciate you joining me for our live version of Life of a CISO, or as I like to say, being a world-class CISO. Now, before we get into the questions, I just want to notice something I did with the wording. I didn't say becoming, right? Because that's in the future, right? Every one of you are already a world-class CISO. You might just not know it yet, right? You might not have the job, right? You might not have the income level. You might not have all those other components, but that doesn't mean you're not world-class today, right? You absolutely are. And the more that you can believe that you are world-class now and not in the future, right? The quicker and sooner that's going to happen and occur for you. So always enjoy being with you. So let's jump right into the questions. As a large service provider, we don't have a risk management program yet, and we don't have enough expertise. What is the best way to initiate and implement the program? Awesome question. However, this is a question that requires a little interaction. So I'm gonna ask a couple little follow-up questions and then address that as we go along. So, do you have a cyber security program? Do you have a cybersecurity department? Do you have a cybersecurity roadmap? And what is that based off of? How do you go in and determine what's happening? And the reason I say that is for some reason, people have broken up cybersecurity and risk management. Now, it might be the case that you don't have either. And that's probably a little problematic, especially for your customers. But like I said, for some reason, there's some places that have split the two and think they're different. Really, risk management, when we're talking about cyber and assets and the areas that we're focused on, is really cybersecurity. Now, the reason why some companies break up risk management is there's other risks, right? There's financial risks. There could be physical risks, depending on if you have data centers that are located. You could have market risk. You could have economic risk. And yes, out of those 8 or 10 or 12 various risks, cybersecurity is one of those, but essentially it's feeding the risk management department. It's feeding them there. So it's not that you don't have risk management, it's just you don't have a separate department that's doing it. Because I would argue that if you're doing cybersecurity, you should be focusing in on your roadmap of what are the threats, what are the vulnerabilities, what are your critical assets. Then what are the threats that have the highest likelihood of doing harm to your critical assets, and what are the vulnerabilities that allow those threats to have the biggest impact to those systems, right? So we're threat, vulnerabilities, likelihood, impact, which is really just risk formula. And then when we go to the executives and we say, what could happen? What is the likelihood of occurring, the cost if it occurs, and the cost to fix it? That is all being focused on risk. That's all risk-based management. So sorry, so something's going on outside my door. It's like somebody's knocking or banging on the door, which is super weird. So I'll keep going. But if people run in, call 911 if you see folks in ski masks coming behind me. But really, the whole essence of doing cybersecurity, the whole essence of what we're putting in place to be able to figure out what is our highest priority items and where to focus on is really all about risk. So I would just go back, and if you want to do some follow-ups there, is it really that you don't have a risk management program Or is it that it's just not named separately? And you say, how would you initiate and implement it? Is I would just start making everything you do in cyber based on risk, because it really has to be in terms of how we roll out and how we implement our solutions. Cedric, you often speak about how to be a CISO, but did you think about integrate the management part of your future team? Which, in my opinion, hold on one second. For some reason, the lighting, I apologize, the lighting in this room is really weird. And oh, I don't know if there's smears on my screen because I'm having, that's much better. I'm having trouble reading. Oh, no, okay, so it is future. Okay, I wasn't sure. I was missing an E there. So on that. So you often speak about how to be a CISO, but do you think about integrate the management part of your future team, which in my opinion is critical? Yes, so to be a CISO or a world-class CISO, it's actually, your two pieces. You have to do the translation of it, which is being able to speak to the executives and be able to speak techie. And you're right, I don't say it enough, but the speaking techie is really the management of the team. That's really having the respect of your cybersecurity team so that they are focused, they understand and are aligned with what you're trying to accomplish and what is important to the executives. So after you meet with the executives or after you sit in the boardroom and you understand the business priorities for cybersecurity, you would then, and you should then have a meeting with your team and say, okay, we're going to realign some resources or we're going to assign some new projects because this is what's critical and important to the executives, and this is the metrics that we need to present back to them. So yes, you're absolutely correct. There's a executive component when we talk about speaking the language to the on the business, but there's also a management component to be able to run your team effectively. And that's one of the reasons we say is I focus mainly on folks coming up with technical, but if you're on the business side and you can speak business really well, your problem is if you can't speak cybersecurity, you might not have the respect of your team. But no, you're spot on, because I see a lot of world-class people that love to be independent, love to be firefighters, love to be the smartest person in the room. And when you become a CISO and you're running a team of 10 or 15 people, those qualities do not work very well. Like those qualities do not come across as well. And communication becomes very, very important, where I see folks that, yes, they can master the business and they can go in and speak to the executives and they're invited to all the board meetings. But then when they sit with their team and try to task or manage them, they get conflicts, they get frustrated, they go, people are not listening because they're not really communicating in a way that the team understands. So Cedric, yeah, you are 300% spot on, where that is definitely a challenge. I focus on the translation because that's the big problem today. But you're right. Once that gets fixed, if you can't manage your team and you can't run your team, that's going to be problematic. So you definitely want to work on those skills. And I would even be proactive there, where when you become a CISO, is go to your HR department if it's a larger company and say, listen, you got to be careful because you don't want to tell them you can't do the job, but say, listen, one area that I want to make sure I do a really good job with is management. And I'll be honest with you, I've done management of teams and projects, but that's not one of my stronger areas. Do you have any management training? Do you have any training programs where for new managers in your company that you put them through? Because I would like to go through some of that training. And what's interesting is most larger companies do have management training programs. That they do have them to get new managers up to speed and through the program, but for some reason, they don't think of the CISO or the security person as management, and they usually don't include them in that training program. So that's definitely something where you want to be more proactive. And management is one of those areas where, yes, you can read some books and you can learn some language, but it really is you have to perform the act. You really have to go in and start to manage and get feedback. The other thing that I'm huge on, and I would highly recommend it when I first became a manager, it was critical to my success, was have the company pay for a coach. There's also management coaches. What a management coach will do is they'll come and follow you around. They'll sit in meetings and they'll watch the rapport between you and your team. They'll see how you interact. They'll review your emails and communication with your team. They'll even talk to your team members one-on-one. They'll do surveys and they'll get data, because one of the most valuable things of a coach is they can see what you can't see. I will tell you right now, every one of us has blind spots. Every one of us has weaknesses that we're not aware of when it comes to management, and only by having a coach or a third party are we going to be able to see them. So that would be my other recommendation. If you're fairly new to CISO, get your company to pay for a business coach or a manager coach to help you with that skill set. Good morning. I'm getting a lot of good morning, good mornings, good mornings. Okay, so Bassam said, yeah, we have information security. So I think that's where I was going with it. Just make sure the way you're doing that is risk-based. So just integrate risk into the security program. It doesn't necessarily have to be a separate program. We get our how to use cybersecurity as a business enabler. Once again, it's breaking the old paradigm that's not true. The old paradigm that's not true is you can have it faster, quicker, or secure. Pick one. Stupid. Why would you pick one? I want all three. I want it all. I want it all. Right? You want it all. So the way you make it a business enabler is do all three. You go in and tell your teams that, listen, when you go in and work on a program, your job is not just to make it secure. That's part of it. Your job is to make sure that the solution that is implemented increases performance, increases revenue, increases customer experience, and increases security. That's your job. By the way, your job is also to make sure that the project gets done on time and within budget. So I never want to hear that you're holding the project up because they're waiting on information from you. I want you to have everything done early first, and I want you to drive that schedule and components. And it's a different way of looking at the world. And some people go in and say the things that are the worst word. Like you want to get me really going with some rage factors. Tell me it's not your job, right? Of course it's your job. Right? Don't ever tell me it's not your job, right? If I've had people in my company where I give them something to do and they go, Eric, that's not my job. I'm like, really? When did we start defining what your job is and is not? I thought your job was to help the company be successful. Is that not correct? And they're like, no, it is. And I thought this is going to help make the company successful. Won't it not? Yeah, so it's your job, right? So you just have to train people, because we've got into this weird container. And I don't know how it got started, but it's a really, really bad thing where people start defining what they believe their job is or is not. And they start putting themselves in this little container going, okay, anything outside this container is not my job. No, your job is not cybersecurity. Your job is to make sure the company is successful and make sure part of that success is based on cybersecurity. So the way you do business, make cybersecurity business enablers, you make sure every project you work on, it is a better project, it increases revenue, and it gets in under budget and on schedule with cybersecurity. And yes, people notice. When I used to run cybersecurity teams, that's how I ran them. And after being a year at a company, I would often have an executive like a COO or CEO call me in and go, Eric, what are you doing differently? And I said, why? They said, we took all our projects for the last year and we said which ones were successful and which ones weren't. Every project that was successful, cybersecurity was involved. And every project that wasn't successful did not have cybersecurity involved. That's cybersecurity as a business enabler. So it's expanding how you view your job and how you view your team's job, to not just go in and try to say no, 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 and break things. It's to say yes, yes, yes in a secure manner. And anything you touch and anything your team's involved with, you leave it more secure, increased revenue, better profitability, and better experience for the customer. There is a cybersecurity executive conference with ISSA coming up. Although I'm not technically executive, I do report to the CEO of our MSP. Would it be worth me trying to go? ISSA is a great organization. I'll be honest with you, I can research it. I don't know a lot about their executive conference, but I will tell you this. If it is really an executive conference, look at who's attending. If it's other CISOs at large organizations and other business executives, then yes, like I said, I don't know your budget or your cost, but I would say absolutely you should go. And the reason is this: first, you want to be around like minded people. How many other CISOs do you hang out with? How many other executives do you coordinate with? How many CISOs can you run things by that you have as a network? Now, if you tell me, Ed, if you come back and say, oh, Eric, I have 15 friends that are CISOs. We have calls once a week where we do a mastermind and we bounce ideas off of each other. Yeah, then maybe you don't need to go. But that's not normal, right? So if you're more like most of the CISOs I work with, where they don't know a lot of other CISOs, they don't have a lot of other people they can bounce things off of, then I would go in and definitely look at attending that. That could be a lot of value, but make sure when you go, you're in that right mindset. Your goal is that you're going to meet at least 20 people, exchange phone numbers, build relationships. I find when you go to these events, if you set ahead of time what would have to happen at this event for this to be the most valuable event I ever attend. And I started doing that with my teams because I've sent them to a few events and we spend all this money and they don't generate any leads. They don't come back with anything. And I'm like, what did I just put you on a vacation to a Disneyland for the week? I'm like, come on. So you got to have those expectations in place where it's very, very clear on what is your expectations and what are you going to come out of that conference with to make it worthwhile and to make it valuable. Also, I would disagree with your statement. Why aren't you an executive? If you report to the CEO and it sounds like you're responsible for cybersecurity, it sure sounds, you might not have the title, right? And maybe that's what you were saying, that you don't have the title, but it sure sounds like you're in pretty close to an executive role there. We got a great question from Dave. If you're hired as a vCISO, what should be your first task for your client that would be different if you were a full-time CISO? There's really not a lot of differences. Right? There's really not that much difference between it. I'll tell you the biggest difference I tend to see between a CISO and a vCISO is not always, sometimes they're identical, right? I know some of our clients, because it's so hard to find a CISO, or they don't believe it's a full-time job, right? Because IT does the implementation and there's a lot of implementation and they just need the strategy that's in place. They're often going to bring in a vCISO. So there's really not much difference. You want to go in and the first couple of weeks, you want to work with executives, understand the business, understand what's being done. You want to understand the roadmaps, understand what's happening. And then once you understand the environment, then you'll go in and start to implement changes. Now, one thing I was saying is one of the differences in organizations that do vCISOs, it's often because there's not security engineers because they're all in IT. So one difference is vCISOs normally, sometimes they do, normally they don't manage teams. Right? So a company in which all of the engineers, whether they're IT, security, everyone doing the implementation, everyone doing the actual hands-on the gear implementation are all under IT. So in those cases, your vCISO and CISO are the same, except you're not managing teams. The other difference is sometimes vCISOs are brought in strategically. Like at our company, we'll often be brought into large companies that have a CISO, but there's a very strategic project that the CISO doesn't have enough time to work on. So they'll bring in a vCISO to work on that. So in that case, you would then be much more project focused than a regular CISO would be. But if you're just brought in and you're the only CISO, vCISO, the two jobs are very, very similar. It's just how are you being paid? Zach has a question. What is Zach's question? I sit on the enterprise risk committee at work and was well as perform a CISO. I'm always interested in additional takes on identifying risks for board presentations. Any advice? A lot of it just comes down to, and once again, I'm focused on cybersecurity, is what it's all driven by threats. It's all driven by what are the threats that are out there. And the two best indicators of threats are historical data and comparative data. Now, many organizations don't have great historical data of what's happened in the past to your organization, but the comparative data. So, are you on ISACA groups with other CISOs of similar organizations? Do you have any engagement with essentially CISOs from competitors? This is the interesting thing. Competitors are competing at a financial level. However, when it comes to cybersecurity and industries being targeted, they often work together in a collaborative fashion. So I would just increase your collaboration with CISOs from other competitors. You share with them the threats you're seeing, they share with you the threats they're seeing, and then that would help increase visibility. Also, talk to your board members. Board members often sit on multiple boards. They often see a lot, hear a lot. Well, when I go in and sit on boards, I often get from the board members, Eric, I'm hearing from another board I sit on this new threat or that new threat or that new exposure. So that's another good way in order to make sure you're identifying and focusing in on those risks that really matter. Hi, Dr. E. I am from a mix of GRC and pen test consulting background for the past 4 years. Achieved an ISO and SOC 2 certs for my client. Now I'm a red team operator for a unicorn. Awesome. Okay. Oh, good. Then it goes on because I'm like, wait, there's no question there. So I'm like, that's awesome, man. I love it. Sounds like you're doing great things and you're conquering the world. But okay, a few lines down there is a question, which is excellent. My question would be, what steps shall I take next to become a CISO? I feel taking up the red team operator role was a mistake, is most technical rather than business. Okay. First of all, there is no such thing as mistakes. Right? Everything happens for a reason. Right? Everything occurs for a reason. So stop that. You stop saying that because all that's going to do is frustrate you. You're not going to perform as well, and it's going to use up a lot of your energy. If you're walking around going, "This is a mistake," just right, it puts you in a bad state, right? So stop that. It wasn't a mistake. It's actually really good. You're getting a new perspective. You're getting some more technical information and knowledge, and that's great. So no mistakes here. So you got to wipe that out. It's not a mistake. It's exactly the path you're supposed to be on. Now, to become a CISO, you need to go in and evaluate, okay, it sounds like your technical skills are fairly good. Where are you in the business? Can you speak business? Can you read spreadsheets? Do you understand business language? I would then go down my path of start reading, right? Start going in and reading books. Attend executive conferences. Like I said, I don't know the specific. I know ISSA, they're a great organization. I know the founder, super wonderful person. So maybe you attend that executive ISA conference, right? Start immersing yourself on the business side. Start hanging out with CISOs. Go to conferences where there's other CISOs, meet other CISOs. Start learning the language, start learning the techniques, start acting and behaving like a CISO, and then technically you're a CISO, right? So it's not going to take that long, but you have to start immersing yourself on the business side and immersing yourself with CISOs so you understand and know what that job really is. How do you convince a board that security should reside under a risk organization that reports directly to the CEO, not the CIO or the CFO? So I guess a couple things on that question. One is there's actually nothing wrong with a CISO reporting to a CFO. So I would differentiate CIO and CFO. You definitely don't want to report to the CIO, right? Because information technology is only focused on availability, and you're doing confidentiality, integrity, availability. But I've known some CISOs that are very successful in the CFO. Here's the trick. Depending on the size of the business and organization and the reporting structure, you just want to make sure your CISO and your CIO are equals. So in some organizations, you have the CEO, and the only people that report to the CEO are the COO, the CFO, and the chief legal officer. So the probability of a CISO reporting to the CEO is very slim. Your CIO reports to your COO, and your CISO reports to your CFO, and that's perfectly okay. Perfectly legitimate there. So I first want to make sure that we're not asking for something that's unreasonable, because if that's the structure, which is true of a lot of organizations where only a few execs report to the CEO and everyone else, like CIO and everyone else, are sort of one layer down, it would be unreasonable to think, at least right now, that the CISO should be one of those two or one of those three. Other thing is, it's usually not the board. Right? In most cases, the board is focused on much high level decisions. That's normally the reporting structure in an organization is normally going to be the CEO or the COO, right, on where you report. So it's more of an internal socialization. So I just want to make sure that you're focusing on the right level and fighting the fights that need fighting. But with that said, the way you go in and convince the executives is, listen, what is the CIO rated on? Uptime availability. Their focus and bonus is on availability. That's it. They get paid more with higher availability. They get paid less with lower availability. They don't get paid more if there's less attacks or less if there's more attacks. So their criteria is not based in any way, shape, or form on risk and cybersecurity. So burying the CISO under the CIO just doesn't make a lot of logical sense, because you're not getting the visibility that you need of all the risks and exposures. And in a lot of cases, as companies have breaches and compromise and other things happen, this is almost a self-fixing problem, because the CIO doesn't want problems, right? So they're going to want, hey, we don't want security under us anymore if you're going to create problems for them with risk. And executives are starting to see that you need a separate reporting structure. So keep socializing if you're currently buried under the CIO. But like I said, keep those other things in mind, that you're fighting the fights worth fighting. Security enablement is like better brakes on a car. It enables the biz to go faster, but still stop safe. Yep, great analogy there. Yep, great analogy. MT on that front is exactly. If you go in and I love my sports cars, and the faster the car, the more powerful the brakes are, right? And people don't always correlate those things together, but they're very important, because if you're going 0 to 60, right, in 3 seconds, you better be able to stop, right, pretty quickly too, right? Because if you can get going that quick, but you can't stop it, that's not going to be very useful or safe for that matter. So spot on. Hi, Dr. Cole. My question is outside the CISO scope. What do you? Okay, first, I'll say I'll do my best, right? Because if it's outside the CISO scope, that's really not the world I play in. So I will do my best there. But what do you think about the SABSA security architecture framework in general? My friend, I'm always going to be honest with you. I don't have a lot of experience with that. That's not something I've spent a lot of time or energy with. I've heard good things, right, from folks who work in that area, but I just don't have a lot of experience. That's sort of outside my swim lane on that front. So apologize on that. If it's CISO, I can usually do a good job of helping you, but just security architecture frameworks, I just don't have a lot of flight time in that area. Many new projects aren't secure by design. Security has had to request changes to keep the environment secure. This makes us not very business friendly, so I struggle to be a business enabler. Engage early. Well, the analogy I always give is cybersecurity needs to be the flower, not the icing on the cake. And what I mean by that is this: when you're baking a cake, the first thing you put in the bowl is the flour. And when the cake is done, you can't remove the flour. You can't even see the flour. You don't even know there's flour there. So after the cake comes out of the oven, if I say remove the flour, it's impossible. It's so embedded into the process. That's what cybersecurity needs to be. The problem in most organizations is they don't engage or involve earlier. They bake the cake, and then once it comes out of the oven and cools, you're the icing. Well, the problem is if you put the icing on at the very end, it's easy to remove it, and it's not integrated into the entire process. So you want to make sure that businesses know that you're going to say yes. Because I know a lot of companies, businesses stopped inviting cybersecurity to meetings because they were the no, no, no people. So just go in and say, listen, I know in the past you might not want us in new projects because we seem negative and all we did was try to derail your project. That's not security today. I will guarantee whatever you want to do, we will say yes, and we will show you the most secure way of doing it. The more we can integrate in from the beginning, the easier and simpler it's going to be. So it sounds like you might have to do some socialization within your organization, but the trick is the earlier security engages, the easier and simpler it is for everyone involved. Do you think that cybersecurity program planning and management, choice of the project and priorities, are CISO responsibility or PM responsibilities? Awesome question. That depends on the size of the organization, but typically high level planning management, yes, that high level of what are the projects we're going to work on, what are the general resource allocation, and what are the budgets. That is something a executive or manager should be involved with. You should know what projects are being worked on. You should make sure they're the highest priority. You should know what percent of your resources are being used on each of those projects, and you should know how much money is being spent. After that, stick. I don't know if you have any track people. You hand the baton off. Right? I used to run relays. So when you run relays, you're going real quick, and the next guy, as you get close, you run stick, and they start running, and you want to have that timing perfect. So as they're at max velocity, you hand them the baton, and they take off. So yeah, you want to go in and then hand that stick off to a program manager so they can run with it. Now, they should still give you status reports. They should still keep you involved, but yeah, you should not be doing the day-to-day running and management of programs. That absolutely should be a PM. The two jobs that I see lacking in most cybersecurity organizations are technical writers and program managers. They have these brilliant world-class security engineers that can do magical things. But typically, world-class security engineers that can do magical things aren't the best program managers, and they're not the best technical writers. So you have this great team that has no organization, no structure, no schedules, no budget, and no documentation of what was done. So it looks like total chaos and craziness. You throw in one or two program managers, you throw in one or two technical writers, and things become magical again. So yeah, those are two areas that you do want to go in and look at. Hey, Cedric, keep them coming. You don't have to promise that it's your last question, right? You can ask as many questions as you want. I struggle a lot to organize my time and be efficient. Any advice to reset the music and start again in good shape? Yes. So two things. One is, what does your calendar look like? So if I knocked on your door right now and I walked in your office and I said, okay, Cedric, I want to see your calendar for the week, for the month, and for the next quarter, what would I see? Is it fully booked? Is there a lot of space? Are there only meetings on there? What does your calendar look like? Because here's the reality. If something is on your calendar for most people, it's done. If you have an 11 o'clock meeting or call and it's on your calendar, you're going to show up. Now, maybe if there's an emergency or a problem, you cancel, but most people do what's on their calendar. So if you're having trouble getting organized and time management and getting things done, then one thing I'm very suspicious of, it's probably because there's a lot of things that are not scheduled. There are a lot of things that are not on your schedule that need to be done. So that's the first thing. Second is every week, pick Saturday or Sunday morning, whichever one you want. Go and look at your week and say, okay, what are my weekly targets? What are the weekly targets that align with my monthly targets, that align with my quarterly targets? What do I need to get done this week that I need to, even though it might not be urgent in the grand scheme of things, I personally need to make it urgent? Okay, here's 4 or 5 things. Put them on your calendar. Schedule them on your calendar. Then if you get in a situation where, but Eric, my calendar is full and there's other things that I have to do this week, but there's no time left. Now we get into our priority discussion. You then take what's not on your calendar that you say has to get done this week, and you compare it to each item on your calendar and say higher or lower priority. If what's on there is a higher priority, then guess what? This doesn't replace it. Next item on your calendar, higher or lower priority. And then if you do find something that's a lower priority and this is a higher priority, then you would swap it out. Then by doing that, you would start to see where you're spending your time and how you're putting your time in place. And then you'll start seeing where it works and doesn't work. I kid you not, and my assistant laughs at me when she first started, but now she sees the value of it, is if you look at my calendar, today is 6:30. I'm on West Coast time, so my day starts at 6:30. Is I scheduled out, wake up at 4 o'clock, 4 to 5:30 gym, 5:30 to 6:30 journaling and meditation. And literally we're down to that level. When I have to drive, it's on the calendar. When I have to go in and eat meals, it's on the calendar. Now, I haven't got to the point yet where using the facilities, right? The bathroom is on my calendar yet because I can't plan it that well, right? But other than that, right? Other than using the bathroom, right? Your time needs to be scheduled out, because the more disciplined you are with scheduling, the more you're going to get done and the more visibility you have. You might get done with the week and go, why did I spend all that time on this? Like, those meetings were not as valuable, as effective as I can. So if you're doing a reset, that would be my thing, is schedule the high priority items and let them be driven by targets where you start with a 3-month target, you do monthly, weekly, daily, and schedule out that target. So your entire day should be as scheduled out as possible. And now you're not leaving it to chance. You're controlling and prioritizing what you do and where you spend your time. And it's funny because people come back to me and go, Eric, that sounds exhausting. I said, no. You know what's exhausting? Working all day, getting home at night, going to bed, and go, what did I do today? I know I was busy. I know I was running around crazy, but I don't feel like I got anything done. That's exhausting. That's an exhausting way to live life. Showing up and having to know exactly what you have to do when, and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to sit there when you have 2 hours going, what should I do? You know exactly what to do when. That's liberating. There's no exhaustion in it at all. You're actually loving life because you've taken the whole thought process out of your day. You just have to show up and do whatever's on that calendar because you already did all the work and the planning on Saturday or Sunday. So it seems counterintuitive, and people love to come up with these excuses. Oh, Eric, that there's no way I can do what you do. It's just way too exhausting. Great, then be exhausted. Because I tell you, I'm not exhausted, right? I'm very clear, very focused, and waking up and knowing that I just do this, and this is very, very invigorating. So I would give that a try. It's a new skill, so it's going to take time for you to do that, but just start putting everything on your calendar. Uh, should I go door to door as a vCISO or a highly skilled cybersecurity consultant? I'm having an identity crisis. So I guess I guess there's a couple things in there. So when you're saying the door-to-door piece, are you meaning to get business? Are you in a point where you're starting your own company, you need to drive new business? I personally want to do the door-to-door. To me, the best way to get business is to get in front of your ideal customers. Start giving keynotes, start giving presentations, start getting in front of your ideal audience. Now, if your real question is you don't know whether you want to be a vCISO or a cybersecurity expert, what do you love to do? What do you enjoy to do? Other things I'd put in place is, Dutch, is how old are you? You have a long career in front of you, right? So I would say if you're right now security engineer, world-class security engineer, and you're loving that, you're really enjoying it, and you're like, this is my mojo. I love CISO, it interests me, but I just love my mojo, and you're having a great time. Keep doing that for a few more years. You got time, right? Keep doing that, master. Now, there's no reason and once again, people think I'm weird, but I'll go there, that your hobby can't be business. On the weekends, instead of hiking or surfing or playing golf, you might attend some business conferences or you might read some business books, and that could be a side hobby for now. And then at some point, you're going to stop enjoying the cybersecurity engineer piece. And you're going to then, because it was your hobby, you'll have the CISO piece ready to go. And you just go, I'm going to now transition to a CISO. But this shouldn't be a stress opportunity. This is not, if you're asking me, should I be a world-class security engineer or world-class CISO? This is not asking me pleasure or pain. They're both awesome. You're basically saying, do I want pleasure or pleasure? Right? Do I want fun or fun, right? They're both awesome options. So don't let it sort of create an identity crisis or stress you out or anything on that front. Just be happy. If you're having fun with what you're doing, keep doing it. There's no reason on the side you can't work and build the skills so when you're ready, you can transition, but don't force it. Don't be like, I have to become a CISO. And even though I love the engineering part, keep doing what you love and then just build the skills on the side. As an introvert, I'm seriously doubting whether I want to be involved as a security strategist. Sales, not sure if CISO is better for long-term goal or go back to tech, perhaps red team. Okay. There is your natural state and there's your trained state. This might shock some of you because you know a certain side of me. What would you say my natural state is? Introvert or extrovert? It's funny because most people I meet, and even friends that only see me in certain settings, they're like, dude, you are such an extrovert. I'm like, no, I'm not. My natural state is an introvert. Nothing makes me happier than for me to just spend some time with Eric, just sort of be by myself, right? Read a little bit. So I'm having very busy weeks and I'm with clients a lot and interacting a lot during the day, which I've managed it. But as a natural introvert, it does tire you out a little bit. So last night at 8:00, sat by the pool by myself, read a little book, and introvert Eric was super happy. Everyone else went out to the bar, right, after dinner, and everyone was social. And they're like, Eric, you should come along. But Internal introvert Eric's like, no, I need my time, right? I need my time. What I'm going after is you can have different states. So there's no reason you can't still do what you love if you're enjoying that. So if you're truly enjoying this security strategist sales, I'll tell you, knowing how to sell and how to sell very well is a life skill. Everybody's in sales. Everybody does sales. So if that's a skill that you're learning right now, I'm reading into the question. So if I'm off, I apologize. If that's a skill set that you're doing now and you're enjoying, it's absolutely great because it's a good life skill. Now, yes, if you're not enjoying it, that's different. If you're not enjoying it, that's different. You then want to switch to CISO or security engineer. I would say is if you truly introvert and you like introvert and you really don't want to learn and train yourself to be an extrovert, then security engineer is the way to go. Because security engineers, there's not a lot of interaction. You're not expected, please don't anyone get mad at me. You're not expected to be Mr. or Mrs. Personality, right? You're brilliant at solving problems. So that would be my solution. Because I'll tell you, CISO does have an extrovert component. You do have to be social. You do have to interact with other executives. You do have to go to dinner meetings. You do have to go to board presentations and things like that. So there's an extrovert component to that too. It's, can you train yourself to do that? I do like certain areas of being an extrovert. I love being on stage. I love presenting to groups. It's a predictable environment. But there's other cases where I don't. So I would just do some self-discovery of what you like, don't like, and where your comfort level is of learning some of the extrovert skills, and then use that to drive which of those areas. But ultimately, it's about enjoying and having fun. Yeah, they said you're reading a book by yourself hits the spot. Excellent. So that actually wraps us up. We went a few minutes over. I like to keep this to about 45 minutes, but we had some great questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. I truly did. I had an amazing time. Have a wonderful week. Make sure you catch out our episode of Life of a CISO. We do have some paid offerings where we're doing some training on becoming a CISO and the CISO cert. So if we can help you in any way, shape, or form, take your career to that next level, please reach out to us. Otherwise, keep enjoying the free content. Have an amazing week. Keep being awesome. And I'll see you next Thursday. Take care.